All right, we have a very special episode here today. We've got the man, the myth, the legend, Gabriel Lopez, aka God's best friend. Thank you for coming on, man. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, man. Like I've been watching your videos for quite some time now, and I was just wondering, can you give us a little snapshot, little bio of what is God's best friend on Instagram and the other social media accounts?
Yeah, sure. Well, I love to make memes, videos. I love to laugh. I love joy. The joy of the Lord is our strength, and I just love to do that through all types of mediums of art in any type of way. But yeah, most of what I do is I make short form videos. It could be anything from 5-10 seconds to a minute long. And telling a story. It could be about just the Christian life, could be about the Bible, could be about God, could be about just humorous things. I love to poke fun at myself and just the funny, weird things that we go through as Christians, different denominations, things like that. I think if you can tell a beautiful story, making people laugh, making people cry, all within less than a minute, there's something fun and challenging about that I am obsessed with. I love being able to capture an emotion within a short amount of time. It's just something challenging and fun about that.
And you can see it translate through the lens. I really have to say that. And I want to get into the creative process because there's things that you do. You actually go deep into theology a little bit. You know, you go in there and you translate deep, complex theological concepts and you relay it to the layman so effectively through comedy. So I'd love to get into that, and I want to. And trust me, I've got some questions lined up because sometimes I watch your reels and be like, how did he do that? Like, get behind me, Satan. Get behind me,
Yeah.
Satan. That's another video. Okay, so I just love all that stuff. It's great. But
hmm
before we get into, I guess, the creative process, could I just ask first and foremost, you make videos about Jesus. Why? Why do you make videos about Jesus? How did you come to know the Lord?
Well, I grew up in a Christian home, but I would say I didn't get saved until I was about maybe 19. I'm 36 years old now. And so I knew of the Lord. I knew all about the Lord. I knew all the stories. I was in the children's church. I could say all the different things, but I didn't know Jesus personally. And so when I turned, I think it was maybe about 16 or so, I used to be really shy, used to be really timid, believe it or not. And when I was 16, I was at a church service one day, and I was actually leaning over and I was just kind of joking with my friend. I was very good at living a double life. I knew how to act at church. I knew how to, my parents were in leadership, and so I would come and say all the right things and do all the right things. But at school and elsewhere, I was a completely different person, living a very, very, very different life of from some pretty deep sin. And the pastor stops the service and he calls out my name. And honestly, I thought I was in trouble because I would get in trouble for random little things here and there. But he starts to uh, share about what the Lord is saying to him about my life and what he feels in his heart. And he starts to describe like film and entertainment and media and this creative process. And he starts to say, the Lord's going to give you a mind that creates so much, and you're just going to be nonstop creating things. And at the time, it was living nothing like that in my life. Like I said, I was very timid, um, very just shy of making new friends and social settings.
How old
But
were
there
you when
was,
you received this? Like, it was a prophetic
oh,
word, right? Is that?
yeah, I was about 16 years old when he
Yeah,
when he
wow.
when he
Okay.
said that. So, not a child, but definitely that awkward age of trying to find out who you are. But and the funny thing is, I didn't even really get saved for another 3 years after that. But I could never forget what that pastor said to me that day, where I never stopped thinking about it. And then 3 years later, when I ended up getting saved, it's all I knew about God in terms of, well, I know about who God is, but in terms of what He wants me to do in this life, this was the only thing that I knew, was what this pastor said to me 3 years earlier. So I tried to go after film and the entertainment industry and just all sorts of things like that. I went after it full force, and every single door slammed in my face immediately. And I tried to do film writing, I tried to do acting, I tried to do all these different things, and it was so outside of my norm and outside of my skills. But I just tried to force it. What I did know at the time was I was definitely trying to just make film my identity, trying to find significance in what I thought God wanted me to do because I thought that would produce more of His love for me. But I went on a journey of finding out who I was, and it took, I mean, I don't know how many years. I probably wasn't. I probably didn't start doing film until I was about maybe 25 or 26 years old. So it was another, half a decade or more of just time before I finally kind of gave up on film because I became so burnt out on trying to force the doors open. And of course, it's just like God when we stop pursuing something and then we finally die to it is when all of a sudden we receive revelation on kind of the timing of it all. But it was shortly
So true.
after, yeah, it was shortly after maybe 25 or 26 or so through a long series of events. But I was working at a place for I was doing home care for people who had disabilities. So I was kind of staying at their house for 24 and 48-hour shifts and helping them and kind of like living with them for a few days a week. And from that place, I started feeling just this random tug on my heart to buy a computer and to start editing random videos and it just started randomly coming to my heart out of nowhere. So I had this feeling of this might be God because I hadn't thought about film in a number of years. And I tried to ignore it. And the more I tried to ignore it, the more it just kept coming up, coming up, coming up. And so I took a big, big risk, especially my wife and I were just pretty newly married, maybe only married for a couple years at that point. And I took a big risk and I bought a computer with what little money we had and basically all the money we had. And I went out and the first day buying a computer, we were in the store of the mall, and I bought a computer at the Apple store, and I went over to the jewelry store next to it because we were going to get my wife her ring cleaned. And the guy behind the counter started asking me why we were there, and I said for film, film this and that and the other. And he says, "Oh, I'm a film student, and I'm in film school right now." He's got to talking, and he said, he's like, "This may sound strange, but would you be able to edit my end of the year thesis for my film thing?" And I had been searching for film jobs for years and years and years, and everything got shut in my face. And the moment that I let it go, let it die, and when it came back to me, the first day, all of a sudden I got offered a film job. And there was never a time after that that I tried to open a door for film. There was never a job opportunity that I tried to force. Every single time the Lord would send someone to me, they would hear, about me through someone else. And it was job after job after job, working on documentaries, working on different short
Wow.
films,
How
working on
old were
different.
you when this happened? Just to get the timeline right.
Yeah, I was probably 27 or so at this point,
Wow.
26, 27,
So
and
big
started
time
kind
gap.
of flying around. Yeah, yeah, massive from when you're 16 and you think it's going to happen like that week, but it doesn't. And so I started flying around the world. I got hired to work, eventually working for running a film department for an online ministry school
Wow.
a number of years ago, and basically taught myself through YouTube University and trying to teach everything that I knew. And I kept on being blown away that God would open up doors that other people that I knew that went to film school and were much more qualified than I was. How come I was getting these opportunities? And it just kept pointing back to Jesus, being like, I don't know why He's opening up these doors, but He is. So I just kept on following the obvious favor that He was putting in front of me. And time again, I would meet so many amazing men and women of God all over the world, getting to film them, interview them, and hear their stories, but also grow in film at the same time. But I was always behind the scenes. I was always the editor, the camera guy, the writer. I was very comfortable still serving and amplifying other people's gifts on the screen. And behind the scenes film work is kind of interesting because it can be a bit of a thankless job at times. You only hear about it when you're doing a bad job because, like, if you watch a movie and it's seamless, you don't even think about the editor or the sound or the lighting. But when something is bad, you hear about it immediately. And that's kind of how it is behind the scenes in film, which is fine. It's just the way the game goes. But I had fun playing behind the scenes and making people look like geniuses. It just became this fun way of loving on people, And I did that for a number of years. I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years. I have to look back, but I think it was around 30 years old when my boss who I was working for at the ministry school ended up having a big moral failure, and the entire school got shut down, and It was so tragic because my wife and I were both working full time for this school, and in one moment we both lost our full time jobs and had to
Oh,
just live in faith in that one moment. And I kind of had a very bitter taste in my mouth towards film after that, and it was hard to not like connect film and this pain that I went through. And so I told God, like, I kind of don't want to do film anymore, which is kind of ironic how much favor He had given me. I just was so burnt out on it. Um, and I tried, but the thing is, we still need to pay our bills. So I said, Lord, if you want me to do film again, I will. And I tried to even go, okay, Lord, what's next? And there was, I think that I got an email from God TV that they wanted to hire me for something. And I reached, it's like when you reach down in your capacity to do something and there's just nothing there to do it. There's just, and I said, Lord, there has to be something else. Even though we need our bills paid, I can't do film right now. I just feel jaded and broken from kind of the experience that I went through. I need to take a break from film. And so we took a year off. Actually, I took a year off from working. We had some savings saved up, and I just took a year off, just kind of recovering and finding healing in the Lord, because I could tell something was coming up ahead, but I didn't know what it was. I just felt in my spirit that He was preparing us for something, and but I had this weird
may I
hunch that it
ask real
wasn't.
quick if I just interject there?
Yeah,
Some viewers, we've got some like Christian and non-Christian viewers, and they
sure.
probably the non-Christian viewers probably hear that a little bit like I felt something in my spirit. If
Hmm.
you could articulate that in such a way as best you can in naturalistic terms, what does that mean?
Yeah, that's such a great question. Um, well, obviously, being a believer, um, getting saved at 19. I got baptized at that time, and I knew of the Lord all my life, but I knew about Jesus. I knew the stories of the Lord, but getting saved and getting filled with the Holy Spirit, there was this voice that was now there in my life that it's hard to describe. And even after all these years of being saved and walking with Him and growing and knowing His voice, it's still hard to articulate even all these years later. But there's this voice inside that sometimes, uh, not sometimes, always is there guiding you and leading you and directing you, and it can show up and through this this still small voice where it almost sounds like your own, but it's not. It can show up in dreams. And for me, this is how I began to grow in hearing His voice. Was you'll know them by their fruit. And there's times where I would hear this voice, and when I see an internal movement of hearing something that's speaking to me, but I see an external outcome take place where doors open or the Lord says, Gabriel, this is going to happen. This is going to take place over here. And there's no way that you could force or make those things happen. And you begin to see those things happen. You begin to grow in listening to that still small voice of His presence. And there's this scripture um, where of the story of Elijah and how he is. There's the thunder that comes, there's the fire that comes, there's the shaking that comes. He's on this mountaintop, and all these big events, these external events, are happening. And it says, but the voice of the Lord was not in it. The voice of the Lord was not in it. The voice of the Lord was not in it. And then it says, then a still small voice came out of that and spoke, and it says, and he knew it was the voice of the Lord. Why am I saying that? It's because for me that story really sums up myself growing and hearing the Lord. There's so many external events that I've had to go, is that God? And growing in the knowledge and relationship of His heart and seeing His attributes and His character over time, it begins to separate, almost like John 10:10, where the enemy comes to steal, kill, and the Lord comes to give life. You begin to know His voice clearer by knowing His character and heart over time, and it's almost amplified this discernment of the friend that walks with me every single day. And so when I say my spirit, when I woke up and I felt in my spirit, it's like this leading. You know, my son is 2.5 years old at the time of this taping, and all I'm doing is just leading him in all these different life skills. Everything from sitting at the table to how we brush our teeth to how we put in our clothes in the morning, how we just every little thing I have to guide him and teach him and but also give him that independence and learning and making mistakes along the way. But it's and I feel that same way. Even right now, I can feel Him leading and guiding me as I'm learning how to walk My son is 2.5. He knows how to run now, but at times he didn't know how to walk very well. And watching him learning how to walk was so interesting because he would do it right one moment and then run into the table the next moment. And I feel that in my own life all the time. I'm still learning how to walk, but as I'm growing with him, there's moments where you begin to run and you really see the fruit of the Lord and Him invading the world around you. So it's really hard to
That's a
describe.
beautiful answer. No, it's a beautiful answer.
Mm,
Ultimately, I think sometimes so many people are looking for evidence. But
hmm
funnily enough, I mean, philosophically speaking, you don't need to prove something in order to determine whether or not it exists.
hmm
It can exist independent of proof because we discover things all the time later on.
Yeah.
And so what we have now is this. Maybe in the future we might get better at it. Maybe I've even seen like they're doing scientific studies about people operating the gifts and measuring the brain as they're operating the
mm
gifts. They're tapping into different parts of the brain. So maybe science will catch up. But as far as I'm concerned, that's a really, really good answer because it is this
mm
understand this knowing. It's a
Yeah.
knowing. It's like one example that I have is that when I started stepping into this idea about the gifts of the spirit, people would say you get these promptings, and I'm like, what is this? And then I'd walk past someone, and I just know something about them. I've never met them before. I just know something about them, and I didn't share it. And it's almost like they wanted me to share it, you
hmm
know. And I feel like that, in understanding now in hindsight, it's the Holy Spirit, wanting you to go to this person and bless them. I didn't do it, and I felt horrible. And I made a
mm
promise to myself that anytime I get that again, no matter how vulnerable I'll feel, no how embarrassed I'll feel, I'll follow that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a particular knowing. So
mm
you get this new job. I think we're now you're about 30 years of age, and you get this have a year off. Now, what happened after that year off?
The Lord gave me a dream that He wanted me to start going more into ministry and more into pastoring, which talk about a very different field of career than film. But I began to pray over it over those next probably maybe 6 months of really, really praying for over it and inviting people that knew me and that loved me to kind of pray over this too. And things started happening, unfolding, doors began to open, and so I followed that, and I became a pastor in a
Oh
school of
wow,
ministry in Redding, California, called BSSM. And so I
is that
I
with
began
Bethel?
working. It is, yeah, yeah, Bethel
Yeah,
School of
awesome,
Supernatural Ministry. Yeah,
awesome.
and started working here in 2019, at the end of 2019, and still working to this day. And the Lord opened up all these doors that I didn't deserve, that I couldn't force open on myself if I even wanted to. And He opened up all the doors as He always does. And I became working as a pastor. And what I didn't share earlier is that all those years of traveling and doing ministry, you're talking about the spiritual gifts and hearing His voice. The Lord began to speak to me so much, especially about the prophetic during that time, where He would give me dreams, and I would have these little moments of like little words for people as I was going to film places. So it was happened so often that I became to expect when I was going to go on a trip. I knew I was going to have a dream about someone I was going to meet there, or that I was going to, whether it was the
Wow.
person I'm filming or a member of the church. Oftentimes we're filming in churches, and it could be like the secretary, or it could be just a random person walking by. And sometimes I would see their face in a dream, or sometimes I would hear just a name. I know this may sound crazy to some people, but it really happened. And I would just write down in my phone the details of what I felt in that dream or that moment. And I would get there and just do my little camera work and filming, and just kind of keep my eyes and ears open. And for anybody I was that I recognized from this dream or this encounter. And so often I would run into someone and I would ask them a question and just share with them a little prophetic word, and it was exactly what they needed at the time. I don't know why
So
God
good.
was doing this. It was very strange because here I am saying to God, I'm just a camera guy, I'm just an editor. Why are you doing this at the same time? But the Lord was kind of growing me. He wastes nothing. He really does waste. He wastes nothing. And so I had a spiritual. He was developing this like this heart for people alongside what I thought was just film, but he's always people centered in everything that you do. And so I would see the kingdom of heaven show up in ways that I was thinking was just film, but it's ministry film. I've learned just to take down the walls of what is spiritual and what is not, because the Lord loves to invade every area. of society. Everything that we're passionate about, he just wants to show up and love on his kids. And so whether you're a
Mhm.
filmmaker or a pastor, he can speak through you. And I think I had to learn that during that time. It just was it's not just for some special people who are a pastor or who have a microphone on Sundays. It's for anybody
And
who
just
wants to hear
just
the
on
voice
that
of the
note,
Lord.
identity in terms of like sonship, identity is a big part of the Christian faith walk, where you start to
Mhm.
overcome the doubt that you have in yourself and start to relinquish it all to God and step into what He's got planned for you. That takes a level of faith to do that when you don't think you're capable, and because He sees you differently the way you see you,
Yeah.
and so that's definitely something that I can share, and I think many other people as well. And those that don't understand too much about what it is to have a relationship with Jesus, it's get ready for a wild journey because you'll go to places you never thought possible.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing about God is he's ordinary. Or sorry, we're ordinary and he's extraordinary. It's like I love it. No matter how aware you are of all your shortcomings and insecurities and weaknesses and your long list, sometimes the longer the list, the more I don't know what it is about God. He just loves making statements. And so I think for me, I've always been one very aware of why I couldn't do something or why I was the timid one or the shy one or the one who didn't not the most sociable person or awkward in some ways. And the Lord just looked at those things and in spite of those things opened up so many doors that I should have never have opened. And it's easy to give the glory all to God when you're walking around aware of such great weaknesses. And so to anybody listening that is very aware of weaknesses, you relate to that, I just want to encourage you, like, my gosh, it's if you lean in to those vulnerabilities, the areas, the things that you think disqualify you, that's not true. They actually are the things that in some ways are the things that qualify you because they're the very things that will be shining testimonies of God's goodness in the end where you can't take the credit for it. You know more than anybody that you couldn't take the credit for those things. And so it's kind of built in protection of humility and gratitude because how else could you take credit for doing the miraculous when you're wired in such ways? And so I'm very
So good.
thankful for
There's a little
opening up
sermon
all
in
those
that, man.
doors.
Do you preach as well?
Not a whole lot. Not a whole lot.
Really? That was really good. That was really good.
Well,
Very encouraging. It was very
awesome.
encouraging.
Yeah, it's my life
So
message of God being the one who opens the doors, and we're the ones who just walk through it.
that's good. So what ended up happening after that? So
Yeah,
you get the dream and moving forward, you're doing pastoring and ministry at BSSM. What
yeah.
happens
It's so
next?
funny because you're like, how the heck does that open up to doing TikToks and Instagram and videos? But this is kind of
When
how it happened. Was oh,
where
go
are
ahead.
we at now? We're what,
This
2019
is
and then
2019, 2020, and COVID was. I got hired in December of 2019, and our COVID kind of hit at least the area that I was in maybe a couple months later, which was crazy because then we took our local in-person school. We had to pivot and take it online, just like many people had to take things online. And I
mm,
knew how to run. I knew how to help and film and run an online Bible school. So it was kind of ironic the timing of it all, just to be able to help the staff members that were there with even little
that's awesome.
practical things like how to set up a film set or how to be filmed on camera. Other the pastors that were used to speaking in front of people and feeling very comfortable doing so, you put a camera in front of them, and all of a sudden they would freeze and they didn't know how to do it. And so it's kind of helping people get past some of the weirdness of the medium of having a camera in front of you. And so I was able to help that school during the transition, which was, of course, the Lord in terms of knowing our gifts and strengths and knowing what we can do. And but I actually fell in love also with pastoring during that time too. I realized I'm not here just to help with some of the film stuff, which at the beginning I thought maybe that might be the case, but I actually found and discovered a real love for ministering to people in that way and just pastoring and listening. I honestly was shocked that I was even getting paid to do it because I was like, I would do this for free. I would pay to do this. I love sitting with people and hearing their stories. Getting paid to do it was like a dream come true. And all the while, film is kind of this thing that I've put on the shelf and going, I don't know that I ever want to do that again because of some of the pain that I went through. And during that time, letting go of unforgiveness, letting go of any bitterness that I felt from the past experience. It took a couple years to kind of find the fullness of wholeness, so to speak, in my heart towards some of those specific people. And I know in my heart that I knew that it's my responsibility to forgive. And so even though there were some really painful things, I may not be called to trust those individuals again, but I am called to forgive them. And so I knew it was my responsibility to forgive. And so it took about 2 years to really get to a place where I finally fully forgave those people. And in 2022, actually, it's ironic. This is crazy. I just realized this. It's 3 years ago to the day, February 1st, as when we're filming this. This is when it happened. On February 1st, 2022, I was in my living room. This is so I didn't even realize the date. That's so funny.
Meant to be, man.
Meant to
I've been
be.
trying to get you. I've been trying to get you on here for a while. So this is Holy Spirit. Thank you, Lord.
It
This is
is.
good.
The timing is perfect. But I was in my living room and I was scrolling Instagram and I saw I think there was like a Spider-Man filter, and this can sound strange. It's like, what does this have to do with God in a second? But we'll get there. And there was a Spider-Man filter of like him swinging through the city, and like a green screen of where you could put your face, and Spider-Man's like carrying you. And for some reason, I saw people filming this, and I don't know what came over me to want to make my own little video of it. And I think I only had 1,000 followers, maybe less than that. People like 800 followers at the time. Were just people you meet over the years. I wasn't posting anything. I didn't post a whole lot, anyways. But I decided to make a little video with my face, where Spider-Man's carrying me through the city, and I'm talking about how I'm such a fan of his, and I'm so excited. And even though he threw my car at an enemy, and he missed him, so he just destroyed my car for nothing, and I was an Uber driver, so it kind of ruined my life. But I forgive him. I'm a big fan, and so I was just kind of making this funny joke about swinging through the town with Spider-Man, and I posted it, and just maybe a few people commented, my family, my friends, like I said. And it wasn't even about engagement, but there was something inside of me that, how do I describe this? That felt like came alive when I posted it. And so the next day I made another little video, just as dumb, just as meaningless, just make a funny little video. And I felt the same thing again. And I began to realize, I wonder if I just started posting a few videos here and there, and there was this growing, I think, subconscious thought, I should say, not knowing that my bitterness towards film as just an art expression of art began to change, and this pain that was there some years ago somehow had been taken away, and I was able to do film again to where it didn't remind me of pain. It actually reminded me of Jesus. I don't know how else to put it. It just really reminded me of the Lord, and I got to have fun with him. And so I started making all these different videos, just creatively with the Lord, where I began to sit down and just as I read the Bible, I would see a scripture in a unique way and try and see if I could make a video out of it. And because I had a film background and I've been editing for years and years and years, it was easy just to jump in and try and see if I could bring something, in my mind into the screen. And I would say I did that for about a month or so before, and people were telling me, you should put these on TikTok. You should put these on TikTok. And I was like, no, TikTok's dumb. I'm not ever going to do TikTok. And I think it was like the next day I downloaded TikTok, and I remember I had 4 followers, and I think one of them was my mom and my wife, and maybe I don't even know who the other 2 people were. But I posted them, and I think I was just posting the videos on Instagram over to TikTok, and there was no traction on either platform. So it's not like there was a following building. I mean, these videos were getting like 70 views, kind of thing. But I was having fun. I was actually having a good time, and my close family who liked it, they would just tell me to put them on the different platforms. So I did, and a couple days later after that, all of a sudden I was getting ready one day for work, and I opened my TikTok, and all these red notifications it had a red 99 symbol on the notifications, like maxed out at 99. I had no idea what that meant or what that was for. I thought it was like a news feed thing. And so I clicked off of it and I refreshed it because I didn't want to see any notifications. And then I went about my day. And then a few minutes, maybe 10 minutes later, I opened it back up and there was said red 99 again. And I was like, what the heck? I thought I refreshed this out what is this? What am I even looking at here? And I opened it up and I realized they were commenting on my video. There were views and likes and things like that. I had no idea what TikTok, how to even use TikTok. And so I clicked on the video that I had posted, and instead of 70 views, there was like, I think it was like maybe 10,000 views or 15,000 views. So I was very shocked. And I said, who are these people watching? I was actually very confused. I don't understand how other people were viewing it. And I looked at my followers, and there was, I think, a couple hundred at that point. And then it began to grow throughout the day. But what's crazy is that same week, a couple days later, Instagram started blowing up too, and that's a totally different platform. So it's not like I just didn't know why everything was happening at the same time, but it
And
began this process.
what date are we at now?
This is February, probably late February, March,
So yeah,
just a
within the
month or so
month this
after
started
posting.
kicking off. Yeah, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, within a month or so, just maybe a few weeks later to a month, and and I started posting videos. And if you go back and look at my first early videos, they're probably so scattered in terms of like what I was trying to do, because it was just making it up as I went. And maybe 5 to 10 videos in, I started kind of finding a rhythm of what I really enjoyed doing, which is kind of what I do now, making videos about just the Christian life, which could range from a number of different things. And it just kind of took off from there.
Yeah, wow. Now, look, since we're naturally in the creative side of things now, first and foremost, amazing testimony. The idea
Thank you.
of, going, starting off with a prophetic word and where it's taken you now, and the difficulties along the road as well, and perseverance. I mean, that's another key aspect in terms of the biblical stories is perseverance. Trusting
Yeah.
in God when there is no hope. That He's
Hmm.
your only hope. So it's great. It's great to see that even yourself, because people would look at you now and be like, "Oh wow, look at all the things this guy's doing. Look at all the views. Look at all this," but they don't see the story that God has written in your life, and how partnership with Him and the presence of Holy Spirit and guiding you through has edified and shaped you. There's a whole story behind it. So it's really good that you share that, because I think everyone sees most of the time what I see. I'm glad to hear this story as well, which is like, I think what I'll do is, can I get permission to show one video? Right? I
Sure.
won't do it
Yeah.
now, but I can do it in post. But
Okay.
this, if you want to know, if you haven't met God's best friend, there's a video that was recently posted that more than likely, I mean, it's close to 40 million views on Gabriel's channel. But if you combine all the other views, I mean, we're probably getting nearly double that potentially, with all the people, the reposts and everything. And there's even people actually copying it in different languages as well.
Yeah.
So with that said, I might just flick this clip through so people get an idea.
How you doing? You all right back there?
Jesus, you're going the wrong way!
You just rest. It's all under control. I am the way.
Now that everyone's seen this clip and get an idea, there is so many elements in this particular video. There is so many elements going on. And so I'd love to talk about the creative process. So people, I think from what I've seen with you, you get to the stage now where you can make such an impact. People sort of copy your way of doing things, and you're in. I mean, imitation is what is that? What's that saying? Imitation is the sincerest form
The
of flattery
greatest
or
form
something
of
like that.
flattery. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. And so a lot of people imitating your work and things like that. So just in people that wanting to get started and spread Christian memes, memes seem to run the world for quite a long time. They get right around, right?
Hmm.
So with that said, what software do you use? Let's start off with a simple question like that. What's the software?
Well, I have a green screen sheet in my garage, but honestly, you don't even need that. I've done tons of videos before I even got that on just the Instagram app, and there's a green screen filter. Obviously, it's very kind of ghetto looking at times. You're clipping through. It depends more so on the lighting. So if you're going to do that, make sure you have well lit room, because green screen, this is like more the technical side, but anything green screen, it just does better if your room is lit. If it's not lit, then it will be hard to distinguish what the background is. So I have a green screen sheet in my garage now that I don't have to use the Instagram app. That makes it even easier. And then I use just my phone, and then I use Final Cut Pro, which is a video editing program, which
Okay.
may shock some people. Most people use Adobe Premiere, and I thought about doing that, but honestly, I for the style of videos that I do, since they're so primarily simple for the most part. I shouldn't say simple. Sometimes they can be complicated, but I know how to use the program so well, and I don't have to pay a subscription either, which Adobe you do. I had to pay just I think the upfront fee when I first bought it, like I don't know how many years ago, 10 years ago now. I can't even remember. But that's what I use primarily for film.
That makes a big difference too, because I know I use DaVinci for all this
Mm-hmm.
stuff, and a friend of mine's been trying to get on Adobe, and it does look pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, having to relearn everything that you've learned, that's
Yeah,
it's such a massive hill to climb. So yeah, you get
it
comfortable
is.
with that. So how do you start off writing or scripting first? Do you pray about it? Do you brainstorm about it? Like, how does the creative process work about making a video? What happens?
I'll show you a note that I have in my phone of if you look, these are all film ideas.
Yeah, wow. Okay. Yeah,
And a
just
lot of them are
it's just
crossed
a
out.
moment.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of them are crossed out because I've done them already, but um, and then some
Hey, I'm right there
they're
with you,
just
dude.
thoughts.
I'm right there with you.
The notepad, yeah. Yeah, it's crazy to see. Just it's as simple as that. Just notes in your iPhone.
It could just be
Um,
like, wow, okay,
hmm
that it works like that, yeah. And then because
Honestly.
I can go catatonic, like I just got this. My wife will just look at me and I'm just like this,
hmm
just working it out in my head for the next sort of 10, 15 minutes.
Yes, 100%. And so, whether I could be listening to a sermon, I could be reading the word, I could be just in a conversation, I could be watching TV, could be walking through the mall, and I will quickly just whip my phone and type in something really quick if it just something pops in my head. Um, and this is where it's kind of strange because there's times when you get and this is gonna be hard to articulate because I just don't know how, but I'm gonna try. You have ideas that are your ideas, and that you're growing and strengthening the gift that God's given you in terms of your creativity. But then there's times when, and I don't know how to explain this, but you just get like a download from heaven or something, an idea that you've never heard of before, perspective you've never had before. And I've been in the church my whole life, and so it's very quickly being like, I've never heard this in all of my Christian life, this perspective or this idea or this thought on this scripture. And those moments where I go, I don't know how to explain what that is or what the Lord is doing when He just kind of sends ideas your way. Because some people will look at that and go like, oh, does God even care about memes or jokes or whatever? And I think before God was, uh, but the first thing He ever was in existence was creator. And I have a deep conviction that God loves to still create even to this day. And so as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. And I believe in my heart that God has given me a gift of creativity, but that I'm made in the image of my Father, and that He still loves to create too. And so I'm always listening for any type of thoughts or ideas or things. And so I'll be very quickly whip my phone and write things down and just continue doing that in the notes. And then sometimes it's just kind of praying or it doesn't even need to be that spiritual. Just be thinking about like which one feels right this week. Usually it's not that serious. Every once in a while I will pray though if I feel like a certain idea the Lord wants to communicate, like, or if it's a particular type of message that needs to be done in a delicate way. Um, Especially has to do with different denominations or whatever. I know when people are arguing in the comments, even though they always tend to. Praying about how to deliver it and how to do it in a way that's honoring, but also real and authentic as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, there's just so many videos that I've watched before, and I think to myself, like the theological impact as well, and how you can surmise these issues. Like even that clip that I've probably just shown before about the idea of Jesus being the way, and that's the thing, right? Is that it can feel like that. It can feel like things are getting out of control from your
Yeah.
perspective, but Jesus is calm. Jesus is in control of all the madness. There's even those memes where you see people sort of like eating dinner, and there's like a cyclone, there's a fire, and you're just super super calm. That's what it is to be a Christian. It's not that you can ostracize yourself from tribulation. It's that in it it doesn't bother you anymore like it used to.
Yeah.
You know,
hmm
and so yeah. So what's what any like? Do you have a frequency of videos that you'd like to release each week, or do you put your pressure on yourself in that way, or do you just go, I'm going to go with what I'm being moved to do? Like, what do you do in that regard?
I would say the first 2 years of doing videos, I tried to first year to 2 years, I tried to average around 2 videos a week, and which may not be a lot to some people in terms of how much they post, but for me, these videos on average take around maybe 5 hours to sometimes 12 hours to make, around 8 hours on average most videos. But
Yeah,
if I
wow.
make
Okay.
yeah, and I, like the Jesus Take the Wheel video that you guys saw, that video probably took 12 hours, maybe more. Uh, and and
Why
so there's
does
a
it take
lot of
12? Why does it take 12 hours, if you don't mind me asking?
yeah. It's more than just the technicals of green screen, and I mean that definitely does it. But for one, playing multiple or playing all the characters, sometimes the skit or the scene requires many disciples or many different voices or things. You have microphones, you have lighting, you have green screen, you have the timing of the script, you have and so then there's the editing process, which takes a very, very long time.
Yeah. Would
But
you say
that's
that
my
what a portion of the time does the editing take in that 12 hours? Half?
I would say most. I'd say 80% of the
Oh,
time
wow. Okay.
is
And are you a
editing.
perfectionist? Does it have to be absolutely perfect?
Yeah, I am, but I try and I've gotten used to the fact that that I have to just at some point let it go. The worst is when you get a really, really, really great idea on what, or I'll say it like this: when you post something and you realized it wasn't exactly what you had envisioned, but you had a hard time articulating it fully, and then you get that articulation maybe like a couple days later or an hour after posting it, and you realize the missing link of the joke or the thing that really brings it together, those ones kill me because I'm like, oh my gosh. And so I'm okay with posting something that was, you know, minor tweaks here and there, but when you're missing like the crux of the plot of what really brings a joke together or it delivers at home, those are the ones that there's a hard time sleeping at night. I'm like, oh, and that'll
Yeah.
always be how it is with any
Okay.
type of art or entertainment. But yeah.
Yeah. So here's some advice from maybe some up and coming creators, because I think genuinely people like yourself and other Christian creators are inspiring other people to partake in the, making Christian memes and videos, proclaim the gospel online. It's funny, out of all the denomination, like not denominations, out of all the worldviews, it's quite interesting that you do get, I mean, some, whether it be a secular worldview, other religions, and they do their sort of take on comedy, but there's actually quite a
Mm,
few, like the comedy within the Christian worldview online. There's a lot of creators pursuing that path, and they find it hilarious. And I
mm,
remember one of your reels, it was like the unbeliever secretly watching Christian meme videos, and you're dressed as Jesus around the corner watching, smiling. I think it was like that. And it's
yeah.
like, that's perfect, right? Because comedy, there's something about comedy that is universal. There's something like
Hmm.
almost transcendent about it, where it's so disarming. It doesn't
Hmm.
matter you believe or not. If I make you laugh, right? It's just like, boom, your walls are dropped. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Regardless what presuppositions or biases you have against Christianity, boom, they're dropped in an instant. So it's so powerful. So
Hmm.
the thing is people that are pursuing similar things for you, what advice do you have for them if they're just sort of getting starting out?
Man, it takes a while to find your voice and what you're gonna do. You may think you have it all figured out in the beginning, but in reality, you don't really find a rhythm or find your voice until you just get up to bat. And I mean, it's probably an American term. Now that I'm thinking about it, when you
Hey, most of my audience is American anyway. So,
okay, um,
yeah,
you know,
you
when
just say
you're
the cricket bat.
yeah, I love that. Yeah, you have to just start creating, and that's the challenging part, is because people often creatives they will they can struggle with the fear of rejection or fear of failure or just missing it or being misunderstood, and all these things are real, and you do have to overcome them, and you have to hear the Lord's voice before you not being swayed by the opinions of man, whether good or bad. if man is praising you and you're getting all these affirmations and things, not getting too swayed by that, just as much as not being swayed by the deep criticisms. And you have to be rooted in knowing the Lord's voice and what He said over you, and have a strong conviction. Like I said earlier, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. And I know what the Lord thinks of me. I know what he thinks of me if I make the worst video ever versus, or in the next week, the best video ever. I know what He thinks of me. And so all of that is important. It's not just a good Christian thing to do, because you're entering into a space where you're telling the world something. Believers, unbelievers, different denominations, younger people, older people, and everyone has an opinion, and everyone's so bold online because they can hide behind their phone and say it, even though they wouldn't say it to your face. And so there are people I've had Satanists say things to me. Ironically enough, I've never had a Satanist ever. I should say this: I've never had a Satanist ever say anything bad to me ever. They've only ever said, "I don't know why I love this video so much," and then they follow, or unbeliever would follow. It's the only people that have said bad things are mostly sometimes the Christians. And then a few Muslims here and there have said some pretty insane things.
The enmity towards other denominations, it's pretty severe, isn't it? That's for sure. They can be highly critical, and not extending a lot of grace based on non-salvational topics too. That's the interesting part. Here's something you said very interesting about the passion and the drive to create. I think that's a really important point, because look, I've just been making them for nearly 2 years now, all the videos, and I can say this. Regardless of, I think anyone that's trying to make Christian content, the vast majority have a passion for the Lord, right? But people might fall into the trap of wanting to get views, wanting to get followers, wanting to get known, right? And I think there's a journey that every creator takes, that when you see those little red ticks and you keep touching it, then before you know it, you're on that phone a lot, and you're seeing the comments and you're seeing the this, and it's quite addictive. So I think we all go through it, and I'd love to get your take on that. But the idea of passion and drive, I just saw on your page now, you've done 1,400 posts, okay? Approximately 1,400 posts. And you look at these creators that are at the level of followers that you are, you'll see the similar line of posts. If people are doing it for the sake of views and followers, you're gonna get tired of it. There has to be a passion to drive you, what you're passionate about. And like you said before, find your voice in terms of, where is the Lord leading you in the scriptures? What do you want to achieve? You've got to have that passion and work with God and what He wants to do, because that's actually going to get you through the longevity, because it takes time. It takes time. And the more you're focused on hitting certain goals instead of doing what you feel passionately about, then it's going to be 10 times as longer. Whereas, in my journey in the last sort of year and a half, I mean, I've just had so much fun, and it's gone like that. So in terms of, so that's really good points that you've brought up, which I think are very helpful for every creator. So let me ask you about this, the addiction, constantly on the phone. How did you manage that whole process with, getting well known, people, constantly message you, the notifications? How did you manage that whole process?
Yeah, and I think that's why, getting a prophetic word at 16 and then trying to force it on my own, and it's not being the time, not for many, many years, almost a decade, really, actually, from when I was 16. I didn't know who I was yet. And I'm so incredibly thankful that God didn't allow me to step through those doors when I wasn't ready, because I would have fallen into that trap exactly like you're talking about, because I didn't know who I was. I just wanted to be significant. And it's not that oftentimes people wanting fame or wanting recognition, it's not even for this evil desire thing, more so than they're just wanting significance, and they don't know that they're significant. And so it's at the core of it, it's just a basic human need, that from a father to a son, that they haven't gotten that need met yet. And so going on this journey of finding identity, like we talked about earlier, and realizing that I have deep significance in the way that I'm created in His image and my identity in Christ, there's this satisfaction now in my spirit that nothing else can touch. But it doesn't mean that I don't need to manage it. and guard it over time. And that's the biggest thing that I would say to creatives is even when the time does come, and even when the Lord does open up the doors, and for me it took 10 years, but just because I entered into that space and the follows and the views and everything exploded, it doesn't mean that I don't need to manage still my identity over time and make sure I'm still connected to the Lord, make sure I'm still, because in the beginning I was getting tens of thousands of views, and then it got into hundreds of thousands, and then it's very commonly into the millions. And for me, I don't know about people listening, but for me, that was so foreign to anything in my entire life that I ever experienced before. The reality of thinking millions and millions and millions of people, whereas now it's like I did the math a while back, a few months ago, I can't remember. It was I think 100 million or maybe 150 million. Honestly, I know it's a big difference of numbers. I don't remember what the number was, but it was some crazy number that I couldn't fathom in terms of views. As you're entering into a space, you have to be careful. You have to be careful to stay connected to the Lord and to know whose you are in the midst of that place, because I like to view it like this. It's like a banqueting table that you're coming. Social media is like this table. Are you coming to sit? Are you coming to serve? And if your heart is to come and serve, then you need to be, it's like, imagine a waiter at a restaurant and the waiter's starving and is eating off your plate as they're serving it to you. And, they're sitting down at the table and trying to make themselves at home. It would be very against what the role of that servant is there to do. That waiter is there to do. They're there to serve. And so for me, it's like that. Is I try and visualize and think of social media as a place where I'm coming and I'm pouring out something that the Lord has put on my heart. But it's so easy to get caught at the table and find myself consuming or just scrolling because I'm so bored to where it bleeds into this thing where it's affecting my identity. And then if I don't guard that, then the things I'm posting can begin to affect my identity. And so the more followers, the more views, the more things, I always look at it as a greater responsibility. The more the Lord's favor He's given you, the more responsible you are just to stay connected. And it doesn't need to be this thing where you're fasting, 8 hours a day. It's really just staying connected. It's just waking up and acknowledging Him and taking breaks when He says to take breaks, and just making Him the priority.
Speaking of that, you did have quite a long break yourself. Was that had anything to do with that journey that you're describing right now?
What's funny is I took an 8-month break last New Year's.
Missed you, dude. I missed you. I was like, where them reels out, man?
I appreciate that
so much.
Yeah, I missed it too. It was so much fun. It was so much fun to make them, and I felt the Lord tell me to take a break in New Year's Eve not last year, but or I think it was a year and a half, or I'm not sure in terms of the time squeeze. Just had another New Year's Eve, I guess a year ago, and I kind of stopped and asked myself, are you asking me to do this because I've let it get to my head or something? Are you asking me to take a break because I did something wrong? And genuinely, I didn't feel like that was even the case, which made it more confusing, because I think my first assumption was, oh, maybe I mismanaged this to some degree, but I didn't feel that. And there was so much that's happened in my life in the last and during those 8 months that I was able to really keep my focus on, especially at work. So many things happened in my family, in my life, where I was able just to really be focused on. And I'm a dad. I have a 2.5-year-old son, a beautiful wife at home, and I genuinely did feel like I was doing a great job of I've always been pretty good at balancing pastoring, social media, fathering, being a husband. I never felt like those things really got out of whack, but those 8 months just gave me even more time to spend on the things that are the richest things to me, which is always going to be my family first. And I didn't know how long the break was going to be. It's not the Lord said 8 months. He just said, take a break, and I'll tell you when you're done. And it was a long 8 months, because there's times when I had to just find other ways to connect with God too, because making videos is a fun outlet that I really did enjoy. And so I had to just be creative and find other ways. And I just started writing more and just kind of hanging out with the Lord doing that. And it was a good time. But what's funny is, when was it? 8 months. I think it was September that I came back, And it's funny that you played that video, the Jesus Take the Wheel video, because when I came back, and I wasn't 100% sure if the timing was right, if I should come back or not, but I felt like this big urge to get back into making videos. And so I kind of started making some videos, but at the same time going like, Lord, if this is not the right timing, then tell me and I will immediately go back into not making videos. But I wasn't 100% sure, but there was this small little thing inside of me that was pushing me in that direction, and I couldn't shake it. So I made a couple of videos, and I think my second or third, I had to look back, fourth video or so was the Jesus Take the Wheel.
I think it was the third. I think it was the third video that you did.
Yeah, and I went to post that video. And this is the Lord. I went to post that video, and I was going to post it at 8:30 in the morning, which is usually when I post Pacific time. And that's because I looked at analytics and things like that for my particular account and my audience. That's just the time that works. And that's another tip for anybody: knowing your audience, knowing the analytics, knowing when the times of it just gives you a better chance of it seen by people because you're subject to the algorithms and all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
So for me, I usually post during that time. And I felt this. I woke up in the morning to post it on the day of, and I had made the video. And I felt such a strong conviction just to go spend some time with God instead of posting the video. And it was a Sunday morning, but before church. So I went and I spent some time with the Lord. And my interpretation of that moment was, oh, maybe I started making videos too early. Maybe this whole thing is, you know what, Lord, I'm going to go back into taking a break and not making videos. I'm sorry. And the Lord began to speak to me in that moment. He said, Gabriel, why are you just assuming that I'm not in, making videos with you? It's not something that we like to do together, and that I'm rebuking you in some sort of way. And it was this moment where that's always been the story of my life is what is my assumption of the Father in this moment? And am I assuming the best of God? In this moment, the Lord said, Gabriel, why are you assuming the worst of me? Why aren't you assuming the best of me? And I began to sit there, and he's like, maybe I just wanted to spend some time with you this morning. And so I spent the morning with him, like 2 hours just hanging out with Jesus. And it was one of those beautiful times with the Lord out of that. And I said, this video, God, am I supposed to not post this? And I kid you not, I heard the Lord say, post it tonight at 6:30 p.m. And it was a Sunday night. And if you open the analytics, at least in my account, Sunday nights are not the most popular time to be posting content. And I said, Lord, that's like the worst time of the week. Literally the worst time and the worst day of the week to post anything.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably not the best time to post this video. But I felt this conviction in my heart of post it tonight at 6:30. I don't know why 6:30. I've never posted anything at 6:30 p.m. ever. But I just kind of leaned into that, which gave me the rest of the day to keep tweaking the video in a way that I really wanted to. And I'm so incredibly thankful that I did that, because I tweaked it a lot. And I think I shaved off another 2 or 3 seconds of the video, which is a chunk of time when a video is only 22 seconds or so. And I got it down really snappy in the way that I wanted, and I'm so glad I didn't post it prematurely. And I think a part of that is also the Lord telling me to wait, is because He knew there was a part of my heart that wouldn't have been
You
happy
weren't done
with
yet.
the way I wasn't
Yeah, you
done.
weren't done.
Yeah, and I
And
spent
the
the next.
pacing, by the way, the pacing of that video is perfect.
Yeah, I
It's
agree.
so good.
I agree. And I spent the rest of the day, and I edited all the way up until 6:30 p.m. and I posted it. And this is the part where it's crazy. I posted it, and the first maybe 2 or 3 minutes of posting it, I said, Lord, I'm so sorry that I assumed the worst of you in just times of not knowing, when in the midst of silence. There's this phrase that God told me years ago, and it kind of fits perfectly. When the Lord is speaking very loud, He's revealing His heart to you. But when He's quiet, it's because He's revealing your heart to you. And in the midst of God being quiet, my heart was speaking. In the midst of God not speaking loud in that moment, all of a sudden I began to assume, oh, maybe He's mad at me. Maybe I did something wrong. It was like the lies or the assumptions or the insecurities of who God is, of who I am in God, began to speak in that moment. And so I said, Lord, as I post this video, I'm posting it in faith and believing that I know You're so good and that You love film, You love creativity, You love all these things. And so this is what I said to God. Lord, I as a statement of just belief and faith, and as a statement of that you are in this process more than I could ever dream or imagine, this video, and I declare this video is going to do greater than any video I've ever done in ever on my account. And I was going to throw out a number. I said, this video is going to hit, and I was going to say 10 million, which is more than any video I'd ever done. I think the most I had was 8 million at the time. And I said, before I said 10 million, I said, no, that's too close to what I've already done. I'm going to pick a number that's astronomically higher, and that I would know that it's God and that God would get the glory. And so I said, Lord, 50 million. I want this video to hit 50 million views with TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all that. And I posted it, and within 10 minutes, I could tell that something was happening not normal in just the algorithm in the video. And I think as of today, I looked at maybe a week ago or so, and the video is sitting at just around 48 million, I think, combined views of just me posting it. So like you said, in terms of other people posting it, it's many more views. But in terms of just my videos on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and all those, YouTube, it's sitting around 48 million, and it's growing still every single day.
Well, man, I'm going to tell you this. When I saw the video, because I've been a big fan of yours, because I know what you're achieving according to my understanding now with all this context, and seeing how deep in relationship you are with Holy Spirit, and how that's just fantastic. I felt that in my heart, because I think this level of creativity is not actually, doesn't come around very often. And when I was watching a video, I saw the break. I was like, this is really needed online. There's a big battle online for different worldviews. And this is so well needed. And I was thinking to myself, you're taking a break. And I remember sending you a message. You're like, yeah, man, I'm all good. Because I was like, is he all right? And I thought deep down, you're probably just taking some time, and it's needed. And I thought it was spiritually motivated. And when I saw this video come out, I saw a couple come out, I was like, sweet, he's back into it. It's good. But when I saw this video, I was like, man, that break, because that was the confirmation for me. I received confirmation from that. I was like, that he is obviously, he was obedient to God's will there, because this is next level creativity. And I think it's so important to show your journey here and the process behind it, because it's motivated unlike any other thing I've heard, in terms of other creators. So what you're doing is, so you're touching people in many, many, many different ways, not only in your work, but also today, insofar as people are getting behind the scenes look of how meaningful this is to you, and it's not really about you in many ways. And that's a good thing too, because when you grow in followers and when you see the notification bells go off all the time, it can become more about you. And you'll find as well, and the one thing that I've gone through is there's certain videos that I do that I'm not 100% passionate about, but I'll do it because I feel like it's needed, and the algorithm will love it, but it's not where my passion and my heart is.
Yeah.
And then you feel like obligated to do what the algorithm likes, and that's another trap. So with that said, we've been going for about an hour. I'd like to thank you for coming on and sharing what you've shared today. I think it's going to bless many people. Is there any sort of closing remarks and advice you have for people, which I think there's a lot of people you are inspiring out there, and I feel that this podcast is going to speak to people that want to do something similar, not necessarily in film, but to follow where God's calling you to go, in whether it's in ministry or whether it's online, whether that's in study. So if there's any closing remarks about answering the call of God for people.
Oh, man. And thank you for everything you just said. That's so sweet. I would encourage people, whatever, realm of society they find themselves in, ministry or film or teacher, you work at the store, whatever you do. And it's also important. Just finding your significance in the Lord. That time when I took a year off from working and I just sat with the Lord was one of the hardest but most fruitful times of my life, because I felt so many things stripped away that I had put my identity in my job, income, all those things. But when it was all stripped away and I felt the Lord still there with me every single day, and I felt the joy of the Lord, it really transformed me to go, I'm so rich right now. I'm so blessed right now. I could do anything that you asked me to do, God, because whether you ask me to go here or there, you're with me in both places. It just kind of, and I knew that in my head, but a revelation hit my heart. And so I would say to anybody listening, find, deeply strive and find that place of just knowing who you are in the Lord and allowing the Lord to take a process and to prune you. Because going into those places, I'm so thankful that having lots of followers and views isn't something that is crippling me, but I can actually be trusted by the Lord to display the love of God in a way where it's not going to kill me. And I don't want, God doesn't want to just bless us with things that are just going to kill us. He wants to put things in our hands and use them like tools or weapons to bring forth the kingdom. And so just encouraging you, no shiny thing on this planet, money, fame, power, any of those things is going to satisfy like the love of Jesus does. Nothing. And I've fallen in love with the reality that the Lord has entrusted me with something like this. And so I take it very seriously. And I feel the fear of the Lord on the whole process of it. And I believe that it's going to grow and expand even more. And so my identity needs to grow and expand even more right alongside it, to know that He's the one who gets the glory, and He opens the doors for ordinary people just like me to see Him in places that we don't deserve to walk in. And that video that you showed, the amount of people and celebrities and so many influencers from all these different types, so many people that I would have never thought that they would have ever liked a video like this, commented or liked it, and I would get notifications and little like priority notifications of this person like this, and some of them would have like 20 million followers or 30 million followers, and people that are you would never think in a million years that they're even Christian or that they have a thought about it.
Yes. How true is that, eh? And some of them, they like your stuff, but they won't follow. And maybe like it's a private thing and you respect it. And I wouldn't disclose who they are, but you will be surprised who's Christian out there for sure.
Exactly. Or the Lord's putting some sort of seed in their heart, or He's speaking something to them, and maybe they're secretly a Christian, or maybe they used to be, or
back
maybe
to that real, baby. Back to that real. Jesus around the corner. He's looking.
Exactly. He's sowing seeds, and I realized, I'm like, what level? I could have all the money in the world, and I still wouldn't be able to maybe create a meeting with this person or sit down with this person. I could try and I could have all this power and money and wealth, but I could make a meme, and they could be in the comfort of their own home, and it could show up on their phone because the Lord can do whatever He wants in an algorithm, and time after time. And so I began to pray over these things. Lord, would You release the joy of the Lord? Would You release love? Would You release salvations through little seeds that, like you said earlier, disarms the walls around them, that they can feel love or understood in a moment by the love of Jesus. And so anybody listening, the Lord, it's so easy for God to reach anybody, anywhere, anytime, whether that's through memes, that's through music, that's through your preaching, teaching, the technology we have nowadays for you to create something in your home and for the world to see it if the Lord wants the world to. It is so easy. The time is unlike any other time in history. And so now's the time to get over those things that are holding you back, and just to say, Lord, do what You got to do to prune my heart in this process. And that part's not always the most fun, but it's the most worth it, because the peace that you have while you're in the midst of the promised land, of those things that you could see in your heart, but you didn't see in the natural yet, but now you're walking in them. It's a beautiful blessing to not be crushed by the things that may crush some people, but you feel, Lord, this is just something that You're using for Your glory.
So good. Well, before we close out, I'd just like to say God bless you and the family and your ministry and everything that you're doing. I think there's amazing opportunities ahead, and it's going to be fantastic. If we could just let the viewers know, because anyone's following me on Instagram is following you anyway, so that's fine. But this also gets released on Spotify as well, and potentially access to other people. So how do people find you? What do they search for?
It's just God's Best Friend on social media, and it's period between each word, God's period best period friend. And for anybody that messages me and says, and I say this as a half joke because of the amount of comments DMs that I get, and they say, why aren't you capitalizing the G in God's best friend? I can't. Instagram won't. No one can capitalize anything, the first letter of their username. No one can. If I could, I would have done that a million years ago. But I try and say that as nicely as possible.
Okay.
And I say, you're not allowed to. And I try and remove the sarcastic tone. But my gosh, people test me sometimes in the DMs. And I'm just mostly joking. But yeah, so it's God's best friend on social media on all the different platforms.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on, Gabriel. Really appreciate it. God bless.
Thank you.